and welcome to the good old British seaside. We're here in Eastbourne and we've reached the 8th round of the HSBC UK Men's National Road Series. It could not be tighter at the top, still all to play for, and the riders will face a brand new event this weekend, the South Coast Classic. The last round of the series was the Stockton Grand Prix, where John Archibald showed the peloton what he is made of, taking home the win with an impressive attack with nearly 100 kilometres to go.
But it's Archibald that gets the win in Stockton.
Well, plenty on offer here in Eastbourne ahead of the South Coast Classic. Last time out, we saw some brilliant racing in Stockton. Let's take a look at what that did to the series standings. Matthew Holmes leads the way on 122 points, but just 8 points back, it's James Shaw. Rory Townsend is in third on 90 points. Behind him, just 9 points separates place 4th to 7th. In the team standings, Canyon DHB, powered by Bloor Homes, have a healthy advantage over Madison Genesis. And that means the Tour of Britain qualification standings look like this. This year's HSBC UK National Road Series is made up of 10 races across the country. At each round, there are 30 points up for grabs for the winner. The rider with the most points at the end of the series wins the crown. It's as simple as that. The seaside resort of Eastbourne lies on the south-east coast of England in East Sussex, just 19 miles from Brighton. This weekend it hosts the Eastbourne Cycling Festival, a whole weekend jam-packed with cycling fun, from amateur criterium racing, mountain bike sportives and penny farthing championships, all the way up to elite fixed gear racing and elite road racing. Far from a holiday for the riders, the elite road race takes in circuits around the South Downs National Park and runs along the coast alongside the famous chalky cliffs of Beachy Head, before returning to the Victorian seafront of Eastbourne, famous for hotels, the 19th century Eastbourne Pier and a 1930s bandstand. So let's take a look at the course for today's race. The riders will be racing for 156 kilometres today, starting in Eastbourne and heading out to join an 11.6 kilometre circuit, taking in Eastdean, Burling Gap and Beachy Head. They will complete this lap 13 times before returning to Eastbourne in what is set to be a thrilling finish.
So we'll be hitting the climb plenty of times and in short succession. So we'll actually watch the moves there, and I think we've got a lot of good riders on the team, a lot of options. So we're not just going to put all our eggs in one basket. We're going to see how it plays out and hopefully use our strength in depth to try and get a result.
I think we might try and chase the jersey. Might try and give it a bit of a bash, see what happens. It'd be nice to do something in an overall series, like a podium. I think it was realistic, but now obviously Matt's. Unfortunately for him, not here, and a few other contenders aren't here, so it opens up a bit, opens the leaderboard up a little bit. I think personally as well, I don't like it when it comes to a Sprinter 200. It's not my kettle of fish, so I like it to be a bit more open, a bit more, a few different factors. So hopefully, we'll be able to get stuck in, and we'll see what happens.
It's still really close. It's going down to the wire. I think obviously the main people we need to look at is Vitus, but at the same time we want to race really positively here and do the best we can anyway. But we do definitely have to have one eye on Vitus the whole way, I think. Looks pretty tricky. It's a lumpy one and really open as well. It could be really windy out there, and if crosswinds are a factor, it could split the race to bits, which can be good for us. I think that's what we'll be aiming to do, really.
So much at stake here today at the South Coast Classic. Let's see how it plays out on the road in the company of our commentators.
So all set to go in the inaugural South Coast Classic as we get set to send the riders on their way in round 8 of the HSBC National Road Series. 156 kilometres of tough bike racing in front of the riders when the neutralised flag comes in to send them on their way. Over 13 laps of an 11.6 kilometre circuit. We're going to roll out from the seafront here in Eastbourne. It's a stunning Sussex countryside circuit awaiting the riders. Expansive beaches, not that they'll have any opportunity to see those or even visit them right now. World famous white cliffs of the South Downs National Park beckon for the riders as they begin the climb, the long winch up to Beachy Head on the first lap. No surprise that Madison Genesis want to try and put riders to the fore in the early stages.
No, definitely not. I mean, they got a very, very strong team here to race today, and they've still got that qualification for the Tour of Britain standings that they want to make sure that they stay ahead of.
Yeah, handily placed at the moment, sitting in second place of the 4 squads battling for selection. Well, it's the top 4 teams indeed that will go to the Tour of Britain in September, and it's those all-important qualification points that will be much to the forefront of the minds of many of the squads, not least, of course, the Vitus Pro Cycling squad, because they're on the cusp somewhat, sitting in 5th place in the standings. They want to ensure that they can get up in amongst the likes of SwiftCarbon, who are currently placed third in the standings of the qualifying teams for the Tour of Britain. So James Shaw is going to just make sure that he monitors and follows the moves and sees what opportunities await.
Yeah, definitely, and James Shaw, obviously very, very capable bike riders coming back into British racing again, but looking strong here. And early on in the races, really quite important to get a man up in the breakaway to sort of settle the race down a little bit for your teammates, and that's what we see Shaw here, just pressing on and making sure that he continues with that up to climb here.
Yeah, the 23-year-old is such a talented rider, late of the Lotto Soudal World Tour squad, on the Pro Tour, on the World Tour I should say, but he's a man who is fighting, I think, to regain a place in the European peloton, so we'll see whether these kind of performances can perhaps be the springboard for a return to the European peloton. Certainly at ease on this course in the early stages.
Yeah, definitely, and looking towards the Tour of Britain, and we were just talking about that is a perfect opportunity for someone like Shaw to show himself again, to get himself back out there onto the World Tour teams. But there's some more riders coming up here as well to starting to form a nice little breakaway.
Yeah, Mark Christian has visited the front on behalf of the Team WIGGINS Le Col squad. The man from the Isle of Man, the 28-year-old, is helping to form an interesting and a very talented front group that includes Steve Lampier, the rider from Truro in Cornwall, 35 years young, and gives a flick of the elbow to Isaac Mundy of the Richardsons-Trek squad. Alex Peters just tagging on the back. Speaking of riders, formerly of the World Tour, ex-Team Sky rider, now racing as a British Cycling private member and joining in amongst the organised teams to see what he can do about coming up with victory in this inaugural South Coast Classic.
Yeah, definitely. It's they're building up a quite a nice little advantage here now. But Peters is looking like he's fighting hard to stay with the pace of the 4 other riders. But you know, it's also when you're coming back into racing and going up to this level again, it can take you a little bit of time to kind of find your way around the group and the bunch and responding to some of the attacks.
Yeah, he's in amongst the big teams, and behind at a remove of less than half a minute, we've still got the likes of Vitus Pro Cycling setting a tempo that's keeping these riders honest, and the likes of Team WIGGINS monitoring affairs from close to the front of that echelon behind, as we've got Mark Christian up front representing their interests. Almost a half a minute to the good for the St. Piran-led squad, with Steve Lampier really putting his shoulder to the wheel. James Shaw as well for SwiftCarbon, absolutely flying along, and they hit the climb once more. Alex Peters at the back of the group, just taking the road less travelled slightly.
Well, I think it's worth to take note that there's quite a lot of wind around on this circuit as well, and also with this twisty climb going up here, that will go up every single lap. Just cutting those corners down as much as possible is obviously going to help you in the long run.
13 laps in total for the riders, and Isaac Mundy feeling the pinch a little bit. This is a grippy one. It's all about measuring your effort across almost 100 miles of tough bike racing. A chance and an opportunity for a wry smile. He'll keep pressing on, but across the top it's Shaw who's not even looking behind. He's happy enough to set the tempo and take some climbing points. For what that's worth, I think he's thinking more about scoring some good points for the SwiftCarbon Pro Cycling squad.
Like I say, Alex Peters is looking very impressive there. There's another group coming up here now, so there's more riders clearly not happy with the situation up the road.
Yeah, Dan Pearson's managed to infiltrate this group. Damien Clayton there at the back of the group as well for the Ribble Pro Cycling squad. And nice effort from Kieran Savage, the rider from Leeds, racing with the Cycling Sheffield squad, who's managed to latch on to a very talented group.
A very, very talented group indeed. And this group, if they can start working together, really should be able to bring the quartet back from up ahead.
Ben Healy is in this rotation. The chasing group behind the 4 up front, and you see Isaac Mundy in the orange colours of Richardsons-Trek has joined in here. And he's continuing to contribute, even though he was, of course, distanced by his rivals up front. Still pushing on. Lee Frost there as well for the No Pins SwiftCarbon Racing Team is in among some exalted company. Mike Cumming representing the Madison Genesis squad, and we're going to have the junction made on the climb between those two groups.
Yeah, definitely. This climb, I think, is starting to take its toll on some of the riders. But what a beautiful circuit it is! Beautiful tarmac, and really quite a challenging circuit as well.
Yeah, we see that Steve Lampier has a little look around, and Mark Christian as well. Shaw too has now been joined by Jacob Scott on the front. So 2 riders for the SwiftCarbon Pro Cycling team, and immediately Scott sets a tempo because he wants to try and maintain this numerical advantage and opportunity for the SwiftCarbon squad. And they'll have a little bit of a think about it, but I think most of these riders are going to press on.
Well, I think SwiftCarbon and Team Wiggins are really looking in very good shape up in that group there now. So they're going to want to keep this pressing on as much as possible to stay clear of this group that's coming up behind them.
Yeah, it's just 15 seconds, so it looks like it's going to come back together again. It's not by any means going to be the full peloton, but we're going to have a rejoining of the groups in the South Coast Classic as it builds up to the closing stages.
Richardson-Trek was born out of Albert 23C, and a new sponsor in Richardson Cycles came along to bring on new riders and give them the experience of riding the big races. And recently, most of the amateur teams have been giving a lot of the professionals a run for their money.
Everyone is exceptionally strong this year. Everyone's got something to show and prove, and I think we can all do that on the Premier Calendar series.
The progression is definitely there, and I've gone from being kind of just about getting around races to my first top 10 in the Prem last week, so yeah, it's all looking good.
Of late, they've really been helping each other on the road rather than competing against each other, which a lot of riders do. And teams we've been involved with before, every rider is out for themselves. In Andy and Dean have instilled the team sort of work together.
As long as I can look back in the future and not regret having not given cycling everything, then I'll be happy.
You've got to jump in with both feet. It's no good standing on the fence hoping somebody else to do it. You've just got to get involved.
It's been a tough encounter so far in the South Coast Classic, and the action continues hot and heavy as we see Jordan Peacock starting to stretch his legs and taking Sam Culverwell with him as well. Indeed, it's Sam Culverwell that's doing a lot of the work here, looking anxiously over his shoulder. The teenager from Guernsey, he's an A-level student, clearly has high ambitions in the sport, trying to score some good points here and maybe some brownie points towards selection with some of the big squads in the future. At the moment, he's certainly making some very strong riders suffer.
He certainly is, and like I said, every time they're coming up this climb, it's all about having the confidence as well in your ability on a circuit like this, when you know that there's going to be a hard climb coming every lap. And when you start feeling slightly fatigued, just maintaining that positive thought process is absolute key. But there's some big riders coming up here now and really starting to press on.
Bit of pain and suffering for Jordan Peacock, having got involved in creating that split. Unfortunately, he's been distanced on the climb. Damien Clayton's still there, the Ribble Pro Cycling man, punching tickets at the back, but certainly very much a part of this group. There aren't too many Ribble Pro Cycling jerseys in here, but they have managed to get a decent representation with Clayton and some of the other names to note. Well, Jacob Scott inevitably almost, and also Mike Cumming, and it's all starting to kick off, and a bit of wind out there.
Quite a lot of wind out there as we see the kiteboarding on the grass there, but this is certainly something that will also make the riders think a couple of times about how they use their energy, because every time you get in this kind of crosswind, there's an opportunity there. You get a split getting caused, and some riders want to take the turn, others don't.
Yeah, Adam Kenway's trying to get across this group. The man from the Vitas Pro Cycling squad in the red jersey with the yellow shoes tries to cover it, as Damien Clayton in the dark blue colours, the light blue bike, is having to close a gap. And it's an anxious moment for the man on the back here, Mike Cumming of the Madison Genesis squad, because, well, they're going to be distanced if they don't get across this gap quickly. And it's tough out there at the moment.
It is very tough, and it looks like Rob Scott has missed that group as well going up the road here now. And I would have thought that would be one of the key players for Team Wiggins.
Well, it's his namesake Jacob Scott that is right on the front, powering along to an advantage of over half a minute at this point. Inevitably, Steve Lampier is in there. Tactics, they say, are easier when you've got the good legs. He's got both a good head and good legs, and he's managed to make it in, as indeed has Jacques Sauvenage, the rider from Chipping Norton. Also divides his time in the south of France, and it's balmy, almost Mediterranean weather for the riders in the South Coast Classic today.
It certainly is. There's a few riders here now again starting to feel the pinch on this climb, and I think it's Jacob Scott that's really putting the hammer down up front there.
Yeah, causing a lot of pain, not least Sauvenage, who's among those riders suffering a little bit. Mundy has been yo-yoing off the front and the back throughout the day, finds himself in a rearguard action, looking for a little bit of assistance from Damien Clayton, who really wants to just get over this climb and get to the ground and the terrain that suits his talents to the best. And what about Steve Lampier? Another haul of points in the King of the Hills competition. He's been in flying form these past few weeks, not just today.
He's just Mr. Consistent all the time, Lampier. I think that's the one thing you've got to say about him as a rider. He's always there or thereabouts, and it's impressive for a rider to have that ability to carry on through the season in that way.
What about Culverwell making it in here, the teenager from Team Estera, who's really burying himself to get in amongst this group that includes Ryan Christensen from the Canyon DHB squad. Dan Pearson's there, Clayton, as we've mentioned, Scott at the back of the group here, number 25, is powering along, and it's a select group and a strong group, and well, down to the final 12 kilometres, and as you might expect, the final climb has caused the split, and it's Scott that is causing all the damage.
Scott definitely had to go here now. It's a perfect opportunity. Once we get over this climb, then it's all downhill towards the finish. So this is where you need to make the big difference, unless you want this as a sprint.
Well, Lampier is absolutely killing himself to get back in, as indeed is number one Ryan Christensen of the Canyon DHB squad. The 22-year-old New Zealander is in a frantic fight to get back on terms. Lampier knows that he can leave nothing behind. Culverwell feeling the distance a little bit. He's just a teenager, but clearly he's a man for the future, and other riders looking a little bit concerned include Dan Pearson of Canyon DHB. The 25-year-old Welsh climber finds himself trying to frantically get back to the man up front. Jacob Scott's on a flyer.
Yeah, Scott is really looking strong there, but he has been looking strong all day, and every time they've gone up this climb, he's looked the most comfortable, he's looked the most powerful on the climb, and now he's making the big difference here.
Well, up and across Beachy Head, still with about 12 and a half or 11 and a half kilometres remaining for Jacob Scott. His shoulders rocking. He's put it out there. He has announced his intention to ride clear and ride solo to the line. It is going to take a mammoth effort. His climbing, his all-round strength and ability is certainly not in question here, but he's got a big job to try and hold off the riders behind.
Yeah, he has, and it's a fast descent into towards the finish as well. So with that, he needs a good gap to stay clear of the riders, because if there's a group of riders coming together behind, then they're going to be able to go quite a bit quicker on the way down the hill.
Yeah, he's pretty good up a hill, and he's pretty useful down a hill. He's not going to make a left turn, heading for home, heading back to Eastbourne as they make that right turn with about 10k left for the X1 Pro Cycling and On Post Chain Reaction Cycles rider. These days he's with the SwiftCarbon Pro Cycling team, and they have got a man who's given himself a great chance of getting the victory. Inside 10k to go.
Yeah, tactically perfect ride, and really has got himself into a good position here now to be able to win this. But you can see how he's having to sit up and pedal a little bit and then get down into that aerodynamic position and back up again. It means that the riders behind who can sort of slipstream each other could potentially gain an advantage and get back to him.
Well, the descent has been completed. He's back down into the town of Eastbourne, heading down towards the seafront. He's had a string of strong results already this year. 4th in Stockton in round 7, 9th in the standings. He's set to increase his position and improve it significantly with this one. The man from Holmfirth in Yorkshire has made the long trip down to the south coast, and this one looks like it's going to be a productive one. The strongest will survive, and Jacob Scott has been thereabouts all day. His teammate James Shaw as well involved in so much of the action, and Scott racing across to his teammate, and he's put it together. He can almost he can hardly believe it. He's having a little look around to ensure that it's going to work out for him, but Jacob Scott has done the hard work, and now he can begin to savor a wonderful success. A little shake of the head. This is an incredible feat and a wonderful success for Jacob Scott. He can hardly believe it himself, but now he can relax and raise his arms in victory, because he has taken the victory in the inaugural South Coast Classic in Eastbourne. Jacob Scott gets the win for SwiftCarbon Pro Cycling, and behind the gallop for second, well, where did Rob Scott come from? The man from Team Wiggins right there has made it across the junction, not quite able to get on terms to overhaul his namesake, but a great second place finish for Scott ahead of Ryan Christensen. And this is significant because he didn't quite manage to latch on at the back end. His teammate has taken the victory, but what about this great 7th place finish for James Shaw? And it's going to haul him up and very close, or perhaps into the lead of the overall standings.
What a great ride that was by Jacob Scott today. Fantastic effort.
Yeah, beautiful victory for Jake Scott as he takes the victory for SwiftCarbon Pro Cycling ahead of Rob Scott. Christensen, Lampier, Pearson, Culverwell, Shaw, Steadman, Laverick and Clayton get the top 10 positions. And the Tour of Britain team classification is secure now for Canyon DHB, SwiftCarbon Pro Cycling, Madison Genesis and Team WIGGINS Le Col.
Jake, not only your first ever National Road Series win, but you've also just qualified the team for the Tour of Britain as well. How on earth are you feeling right now?
Yeah, pretty proud. Wanted the Tour of Britain sealed before the Isle of Man, and then I thought, what's the best way of doing that? And go and win it. And I was thinking all day, there was 2 Vitus guys and a few other guys kicking about, so it was like all day just thinking in my head, and then yeah, I was like, with the front group of 5 we're in, there was no Wiggins, no Vitus, no Madison. And yeah, there was no point not to try what I did, and as soon as I went I thought, oh, it's a bit grippy, but yeah, I felt absolutely brilliant. So yeah, we just got more consistent, I think, as a team, a little bit stronger, and today was absolutely perfect, so yeah, perfect.
So in the overall standings, James Shaw moves 10 points clear ahead of Matthew Holmes of Madison Genesis, and after that win, Jacob Scott moves up to 3rd. And in the team standings, Canyon DHB, powered by Bloor Homes, extend their lead at the top of the table. SwiftCarbon Pro Cycling move up into 2nd, Team WIGGINS Le Col in 3rd. Well, a stunning race here at the South Coast Classic and a brilliant win for Jake Scott of SwiftCarbon Pro Cycling. The next round of racing is the Manx International, a 3-day event starting on Friday the 2nd of August in the Isle of Man. Why not join us roadside or catch up on all the highlights? For everything else from the National Road Series and the world of cycling, head to britishcycling.org.uk or follow the hashtag National Road Series. But from us here in sunny Eastbourne, bye for now and see you next time.